Modern day Prestonpans. A time where everyone relies on technology for everything. Mobile phones, contactless credit cards, electric cars. It hasn't always been like this, however. Back in 1795, people had to use their own skill and wit to help them get through. This is a story about one such battle that took place in Prestonpans all this time ago. This is the Battle of Prestonpans. In the summer of 1745, Sir John Cope met with the French army in hope of gaining a new ally. Spurred on by a previous French victory with help from British soldiers, Cope set sail for Eriskay, hoping that the French would assist him in his attempt to invade Scotland. While him and his army were marching up to Edinburgh, he received intel suggesting that there was a large Jacobite blockade further along his path, forcing him to divert to Fort George. However, by doing this, Edinburgh was now exposed and vulnerable. At this point, Prince Charles also had his eyes set on Scotland, so he marched to Edinburgh and proclaimed his father James VIII of Scotland. Realising his mistake, Cope dispatched his dragoons and speed marched his infantry from Inverness to Dunbar, where he reunited with them. He then started towards the capital before receiving information about the Jacobites planning an ambush on them. Now, here to tell you a bit about the battle itself is Mr. Aaron Johnston, who is a freelance historian, writer, speaker and consultant based in East Lothian.
Well, the Battle of Prestonpans was really the climax of 4 weeks of campaigning. So although it's often talked about as if it's one of the shortest battles in Scottish history, it didn't just come out of nowhere. Prince Charles Edward Stuart, the Jacobite leader, had hoped to use an opportunity he had in September 1745 when the British Army had a very small presence in Scotland to get rid of them and overthrow George II in his father's favour. So Prestonpans was a battle whereby Prince Charlie, who'd got very little experience himself, raised an army of about 2,500 pretty untested Highland soldiers, brought them down from the Highlands and faced off with the professional red-coated soldiers of Sir John Cope down at Prestonpans. It was a pretty quick battle once it actually got started. There was an afternoon of manoeuvres and skirmishes beforehand on the 20th of September. And then the Jacobites went down a little-known path that led them around the British Army's position on the morning of the 21st and gave them a chance to launch this devastating charge, which broke the British lines in a matter of minutes. So it was very much, when it came down to it, a test between Highlanders with their broadswords and their targets and their muskets against the professional volley fire of the British Army. But nothing had prepared them for the ferocity of that attack that came in. Perhaps the most important thing about the Battle of Prestonpans, though, is that it had a very long and, in fact, continuing cultural legacy. People still talk about it, sing songs about it, write plays about it. And so it's had a legacy that's far longer than the actual fighting itself. And part of what we try to do with reenactments and new artworks and creative programs is try to continue that legacy today and keep people talking about the Battle of Prestonpans.